So I'm going to be talking about from October 7th to total victory, why Israel must finish the job and reclaim Gaza. But on the way to answering that question and dealing with that issue, I want to touch upon issues that are all interconnected. First of all, more important than explaining what the state of Israel, what the IDF must do, how do we win this war, where were we October 7th, where are we today, when is this war going to end, etc., etc., etc. I believe it is much more important to understand that this war is much more than just one on the battlefield. It's not just against actual enemies that I actually call Islamo-Nazis, who are not only out to kill us Jews, but out to kill all infidels, non-Muslims, all across the freedom-loving world. We are actually the forefront of a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war. It's the spiritual war that has two different levels, one for all of humanity and then one for the Jews themselves. For all of humanity, you could call it the fight of good versus evil. Never before has it been so clear, yet so ignored, who is good and who is evil. And then connecting to a different holiday, the holiday of Hanukkah, there is the call of the Jew, of the Maccabee, Mi la Hashem Elai. Who is joining me to fight for God, fight for Hashem? That's what we're witnessing today. Because God represents morality, good versus evil. And everyone has been given a clear choice. Clear! It couldn't be clearer. Dealing with an Islamo-Nazi enemy that literally strangles little babies? Like, how much clearer does God have to make it for humankind, for every single person in this world, no matter how old, that we are dealing with an evil that must be dealt with as an evil and called out as an evil and stood against as an evil? So that's the dividing line of the spiritual war for humanity. The second level of this spiritual war is specifically for the Jewish people, for every single Jew, regardless of religious level, political affiliation, doesn't make a difference. God has made it clear. That division between good and evil comes down to what kind of Jew are you? Are you a Jew who stands up for the morality that God introduced to humanity by choosing the Jewish people? By choosing us to be part of the Jewish people? Or are you the Jew who is choosing evil and going against everything that a Jew is supposed to stand for in trying to make the world a better place? Because the essence of making the world a better place, the essence of the Jewish people, what God introduced to the world by us, was morality. And those who choose not to stand with the Jewish people in the Jewish state of Israel today, and especially our fellow Jews, they are clearly choosing immorality. And in a sense, writing themselves out of the history books of the Jewish people. Because by their actions and their decisions of which side to support or not to support, it is clear that their daily lifestyle is not going to be one that's going to pass down a pride of Jewish identity within their own family, their own children, their own grandchildren. And I believe all of you here in America are seeing this spiritual war, and we'll go into the post-October 7th reality in a little bit. But it is clear that many Jews today, because of the growing Jew-hating anti-Semitism post-October 7th, they are now have a stronger Jewish identity than they had on October 6th, 2023. Doesn't necessarily mean they're more religious. That's not it. But they realize their Jewish identity means something, and it's not just a checkbox on a DEI, whatever form of whatever, the bank, the medical, whatever. It's not just a box to check off. It's who you are as a person. How central is that identity to you? And it is pushing many, not enough, I don't think it's a majority, but it's a nice percentage of Jews today, of all ages, and especially young Jews, to be searching, what does this Jewish identity mean to me? What does it mean for me to be a Jew and be part of the Jewish people? And ultimately, regardless of what I will be telling you, how we win this war with total victory, which includes the Jewish people once again being sovereign in our ancestral lands of the Gaza Strip and more. But the true victory for this war is going to be the ultimate strengthening of the Jewish people as a nation in our pride of being the chosen people, not chosen because we're any better than any other human being, chosen because we understand we were chosen for a purpose, in order to impact humanity by doing one simple thing, by being a proud Jew and being connected to God in our way as best as possible, and in that way impacting the world. That is how we're going to win this war for all of humanity. And on the miracles level, and I wanted to thank the Rabbi and the Rebbitzin for hosting in their Chabad Center here, and I actually gave a talk this Shabbat, which is another talk I've been giving, depending upon the audience, about the miracles of October 7th and the miracles of the war that have brought us to where we are today. Because the Jewish people in the Jewish state of Israel today are supposed to be in a much, much worse place. And this Purim, and again, I'm not giving you all the details of all the miracles. You have to come up to another talk. But this Purim, when we celebrate the miracle of Purim and what Mordechai and Esther did to save the Jewish people, more than any time before in our lives, definitely in my lifetime, and I believe in the lifetime of anyone else here, we have to be celebrating with such happiness that despite the tragedy we are still living with, and don't get me wrong, we're still living in a tragedy, but guess what? We're living in the tragedy of the Holocaust. We're living in the tragedy of the pogroms. We're living in the tragedy of what happened to the Jewish people back on the Temple Mount and the destruction of Jerusalem and the Temple 2,000 years ago. We're always living in a tragedy. The question is, what kind of Jew are we? Are we October 7th Jews, only in the sadness of the tragedy? Or are we October 8th Jews, understanding part of our identity as Jews is knowing how to live with this complexity of living with a tragedy and history of tragedy, but moving forward to be a positivity and morality for humanity. And I know I choose to be that October 8th Jew, and that's how we win this war. So that's about the miracles talk. So celebrate like never before this Purim, because there are so many miracles happening that have taken place and continue to take place. All right, let's go to answer the question. How do we have total victory? Well, first of all, in order to have any victory, you first have to define who the enemy is. If you do not define who the enemy is correctly, you cannot win. Pretty simple, right? All right, so let's go through this for a second, because I'm about to posit the thesis, and this is actually the message that I was giving across together with the Likud MK Amit Halevi all week in Washington, going through the halls of Congress with congressmen and senators, helping them understand this. Our enemy is not the Islamic regime of Iran. Our enemy is not Hamas. Our enemy is not the Palestinian Authority. Our enemy is not the Houthis. Our enemy is not the Muslim Brotherhood. All right? Let me give you an example of why that's not the enemy. Tomorrow, please God, Israel, together with the United States under the leadership of the Trump administration, or with the backing of the Trump administration, we bomb the nuclear reactors in Iran, we destroy the Shiite regime of Iran, and there's a revolution in Iran, and finally the Iranian people have their freedom, and once again Israel and Iran are close allies as we were before the Islamic Shia revolution in 1979. Even if and when that happens, and please God that should happen, guess what? The evil of the Islamic regime of Iran will live on. Because they are not about a regime, they're not about soldiers, they're not about Iran. because the Islamic Shiite regime of Iran has invested billions or trillions of dollars and American U.S. taxpayer money that have been given over the years by the Biden administration, the Obama administration, etc. What have they used that money for? Not for the Iranian people. They've used it to export their genocidal Islamo-Nazi ideology all over the world. They have communities in Europe. They have countries in Africa. They have countries in South America. They have communities in America. So even if and when, please God, we succeed in destroying the nuclear reactors and allowing for there to be a regime change in Iran, the genocidal Islamo-Nazi ideology of the Shia Islam will be living live and well and continuing to endanger us. And the same thing with the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, financially sponsored by Qatar, Hamas, Palestinian Authority, and every other name of a terror organization that Western governments, well, this one isn't as bad as that one, so let's give our money to this one. Even though the day comes that they're going to turn on America and the West with the money and the weapons funded by America and the West. So who is really the enemy we're fighting against in order to have total victory? Again, it's not the Shia Sunni, it's not the Shia Iranians, it's not the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, Hezbollah, Hamas. It's an ideology. We're fighting an ideology. And we're only going to have total victory. The Jewish people, the Jewish state of Israel is only going to have total victory, and not just a victory for us, but a victory for the whole freedom-loving world when that ideology is beaten down to a pulp and can't raise its head or its pinky to do anything. So even when the Jewish state of Israel takes care of Iran, Hezbollah, Sunnis, whatever, Hamas, true total victory for the freedom-loving world will not be achieved so long as our Western democratic governments, who are very hamstrung to take care of an ideology in your midst, because freedom of religion, freedom of expression, you know how many imams are in America today preaching the destruction of Israel and America? In America. I'm sure in Florida. Right? Why are they allowed to live here? Why are they allowed to preach the destruction of Israel and America and the killing of Jews in the name of Islam? Because it's a democracy. Democracy does not yet have the tools to stop that from happening. So in our meetings in Washington this week, we were telling them, okay, let's focus on Israel right now. All right? We can't help solve America and the whole West, but we can help America and the West by being the front line and winning the war on the front line. Because as long as we're able to stop it on the front line, that also helps America on the West. So us winning our war against this ideology that we're up against in the Middle East will also help America and the West. So this is why you, Congressman X or Senator X, should support us in this war to defeat this ideology and X, Y, and Z that we need to do. So what did we explain? One of the most important things we need to do. Sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. Why? What's the connection? Well, you have to understand the enemy, you have to understand the ideology. The ideology is the enemy. Anyone who understands Islam, the jihadi Islam, Sunni and Shia, they don't care about their children. They don't care about their mothers. They don't care about their grandmothers. Right? Gaza has been destroyed, and they're celebrating as if they're victorious. Why? Because they've lived in that land to kill us another day. To them, that's victory despite whoever was killed and the destruction of their communities. When will they understand they lost? When the land is no longer theirs. When they're out of that land. So the only way Israel has victory in this war is ensuring that we are back as sovereign in Gaza, Judea, and Samaria. And hence our ask for all these congressmen and senators who we met with this week was, when Israel decides to finally apply sovereignty as we should over our ancestral lands of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. And I'm just going to throw an anecdote out there. Obviously, anyone who understands the Bible knows the Jewish connection with Gaza from Bible times. But even not Bible times, anyone here sing songs at the Shabbat table on Friday nights or Shabbat? Right? It's a pretty well-known custom at Jewish Shabbat tables. Anyone know the song Yaribon, Karibon, sung on Friday nights? The song Yaribon, sung by many Jewish families all over the world for hundreds of years, was written by a rabbi named Rabbi Yehuda Najara, who was the chief rabbi of Gaza City in the 17th century. So don't let anyone tell you Gaza does not belong to the Jewish people. We were there before the Arabs. We're going to be there after the Arabs. Our history is in Gaza. So yes, Judea, Samaria, and Gaza one day must be under Israeli sovereignty in order to win this war, because that's the only message, the only way of getting the message across to our ideological enemies, both of the Shia and the Sunni, that they lost. Because the only thing they care about is land. That's it. And if America wants to be safer, then we have to be safe. They want to help us beat this ideology, to help them, to help you in America. You have to support us when we apply sovereignty in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. So to me, it is clear. It is clear. It's not a question of if we're going to apply sovereignty. It's a question of when. And anyone who wants to ask me questions later, what do I think about Trump saying America's going to control Gaza? I don't really think America's going to control Gaza. He's clear he doesn't want to send U.S. soldiers to Gaza. Most probably he wants to build a port in Gaza, which I'll get to later. And my tagline is, and please God, I'll be making t-shirts and hats and everything with this, make Gaza Jewish again. And again, I'm saying that not just because of my religious belief. I'm saying it from a realistic analysis of understanding of the war and the enemy, to be able to provide the victory to protect all Israelis and better protect the whole freedom-loving world. All right. Let's go next. Let's take a step back for a second to the growing anti-Semitism that is unfortunately pretty clear to see all across the West, and especially in America, and even in the wonderful free state of Florida, the newest refuge for Jews, and especially New York Jews. I don't know how many of you are from New York or Florida and you're happy about the New York Jews coming or not. No clue, okay? But we all know growing anti-Semitism, and a spike in this anti-Semitism, October 7th, immediately. Not everybody remembers, but I'm very active as part of my work in the Pulse of Israel, active online for Israel, standing up for Israel. Again, a belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect truth. I believe every Jew should be going on the offense. And too many Jewish organizations, not the ZOA, they're one of the only ones that also go on the offense. But all the rest, Allison, you can clap. But all the organizations, mostly all except for the ZOA, are always on the defense. Mostly all Jewish Israel online influencers are always on the defense. It's always about what the latest lie is we have to fight off. And and my heart goes out to all the college students that on a daily basis it's a new lie. We killed this, we murdered that, we bombed that, genocide this, and they're always looking for the information. I call it whack-a-mole. It's whack-a-mole. Every day is another lie, and we're always, our kids, our youth, and even adults, they're always running around, well, what's the truth? What's the real information? How do I stand up against this? And while, yes, it's important to know the truth, to deal with that, unfortunately, in the activism arena and in the arena to save our children, it's a losing battle. You know how debilitating it is to always be on the defense? I mean, I'm sure they're sports players here, right? Men and women. How debilitating it is, whatever sport you're playing, you're on defense the whole game. I mean, even if you're good at it, if the other team is obviously winning because you're always on defense, you just raise your hands like, well, why am I playing the game? So even the strongest of our youth, but on a daily basis, having to play defense, it's debilitating. It's like, I don't want to play defense anymore. And it wears on you, and maybe they're right. I mean, okay, I know, I got the truth, but this lie and that lie, I can't deal with it anymore. Maybe they're right. Maybe Israel is the bad guy. Maybe Israel is it. It's debilitating. And all this money being spent to help our college students to be on the defense. And it all comes down, again, with misdiagnosing the problem of the growth of the Jewish anti-Semitism today. And again, I'm one of the people, I always say, anti-Semitism always was, anti-Semitism is, Jewish anti-Semitism always will be. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. It's just a question of how much. And I know plenty of you, and myself included, we grew up and lived here in the best years of probably the most amazing diaspora community for Jews in all of history. All history. Right? And it's hard to accept, but it's over. It's not coming back. We enjoyed the good times. I know I enjoyed the good times. 70s, 80s, beginning of the 90s even. Good times. Not coming back, folks. Not coming back. And I know people think, oh, Trump's in the office now, and he's making these policies and legal things, and all the legal, and defunding our universities. We're talking about a neo-Marxist ideology that has been working for decades to destroy America using Jew hatred and anti-Israelism. It's not going away no matter what Trump policy is able to do in 4 years. It's here, it's going to grow, and it's going to get worse. It's going to become more dangerous everywhere. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you all come to me afterwards saying, Avi, you were wrong. But I'm a student of history. And as a student of history, you look at every single other successful diaspora. The worst came when it was the best. We assimilated, we succeeded, we got to the top of the top, and then came the downfall. And again, I don't have to say to many of you, Nazi Germany was not Nazi Germany before the Nazis. Germany was an unbelievable, successful Jewish assimilation into German society. Whereas the Jews, the religious Jews, called Berlin the New Jerusalem. That's how good life was for Jews in Germany. And it was at the pinnacle of success. Then came the Holocaust. You go back to the Spanish Inquisition. I always love bringing up the Abarbanel, one of the most famous rabbis in all of the Chumashim. He was the economic financial advisor to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, a religious Jew, rabbi. They loved him so much, they said, Rabbi, we're about to do this to the Jewish community. We want to save you. Just convert and you'll be fine. And he had to run away from Spain because he wouldn't convert. When was the Spanish Inquisition? When the Jews succeeded and made it to the top. We're past the top. We already made it to the top. We're already witnessing and living the downward spiral of America towards Jews and as a society. And I really believe, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. Trump should succeed, his administration should succeed over the next 4 years, but it's a stopgap. Because this neo-Marxism is out to destroy everything as we know it, and ideologies are hard to destroy, especially when they're working in tandem with the Islamism. So it's a red-green alliance. So what happened on October 7th? I don't know how many college students are here, but Israel did not begin its military offensive until around 2 or 3 weeks after October 7th. Right? Okay. Now, keeping that in context, what is the tagline, the marketing campaign of the anti-Israel campaign in this whole war. We're doing what?
Genocide.
Genocide, right? For the first 2 weeks, they were already protesting in the streets. Israel didn't begin its military campaign for 2-3 weeks. What were they protesting about? Again, on college campuses, New York City, Los Angeles, the streets, right? People don't remember this. People have to remember this. What were they protesting? They were celebrating. They were celebrating the Hamas massacre. I don't know if anyone remembers the famous video that came out of Australia, October 8th. Gas the Jews. Gas the Jews. That's they were screaming as they were protesting outside of the Opera House of Melbourne, Sydney, whatever it's Sydney, right? Gas the Jews on October 8th. But we didn't do anything yet. They massacred us. Streets of New York, Colombia, Los Angeles. They were celebrating the Hamas massacre, celebrating how they flew in on hang gliders and massacred innocent festival goers there to just enjoy music. Celebrating. And again, the Jew is thinking, wait a second, we're the victim. Why aren't we getting sympathy? Why aren't we getting support? Why is Hamas getting support? And this is before the genocide claims. We didn't start the military offensive. So people have to understand that this is a spiritual war where, because the Jewish people represent something that the rest of the world don't want, they celebrate when bad things happen to us. And what is the cause that they're celebrating? October 7th, October 8th, to this day, but again, it's before the military offensive began. Why were they celebrating Hamas? What's the banner of the cause they're celebrating? From the river to the sea, what's the cause? Palestine! Alright? The core of today's Jew hatred, the core of today's anti-Semitism, is the Palestinian national identity. It's the Palestinian movement. It's the two-state solution. Any Jew who supports the two-state solution is supporting Jew-hating anti-Semitism. It's clear. Why is everyone out excited to bash the Jew? In the name of Palestine. They don't care about the facts. They don't care about the reality. They don't care about our hostages. They don't care about what happened to us October 7th. In the name of from the river to the sea, in the name of Palestine, it is today, I'm using the Hebrew word, mutar, it is today correct and virtuous to hate Jews. Right? It could be that someone hated a Jew beforehand, but they wouldn't say it. Then it's racism. You don't do that. Oh, because of now after October 7th, it's virtuous to hate the Jew. Now, let me explain to you how we also know Palestine, the cause called Palestine, the Palestinian national identity, is really anti-Semitic and nothing to do with any people. Well, I challenge anyone in here to go to Google and look up the archival headlines, newspaper reportings about Jews and Arabs in Palestine back in the 1920s and the 1930s. Who were referred to as Palestinians? Jews. Don't you think, and especially for the young leadership here and those who work with college students who have to deal with this insanity, lying, anti-Semitic propaganda on a daily basis, don't you think if there was a historic people called Palestinians with a right to a land called Palestine, that in the headline news they would have been called Palestinians? Right? I mean, Golda Meir is the famous Israeli prime minister who, on a famous interview on American television, raised her passport. It was the British Mandate of Palestine, saying, I'm a Palestinian! There is no people called Palestinians! Golda Meir, right? So that's data point number one. Let's go to data point number two. I challenge anybody, and use this with your people. Use this with your talking points. Google the United Nations Partition Plan. It's a document by the international community, right? Guess what term is not used? Palestinians. It's the Jews and the Arabs to create a Jewish state and an Arab state. Don't you think If there was a right of a people called Palestinians to establish their sovereignty over their own homeland called Palestine, the United Nations would have used the term Palestinians get Palestine. But it doesn't, because there were no Palestinians in 1947, and there was no ancestral land called Palestine that belongs to a fake invented people called Palestinians in 1947. Let's go on to the next data point. Between 1948 and 1967, who occupied Judea and Samaria? Jordan. For 19 years, was there ever anybody who made a claim on the international level, or countries, or the United Nations, or people, who called to establish a state called Palestine in Judea and Samaria? No. Don't you think if they were a people and they deserved their land that was being occupied by the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, who? The Hashemite kingdom are the true occupiers of Jordan, because they're a tribe from Saudi Arabia given Jordan as a prize by Britain for helping them in the First World War. So they have no connection to the land, and they're in charge there. So they're the true occupiers. But let's forget that. There was never a call for 19 years to establish a Palestinian state instead of the Jordanian occupiers. No. And no call for Gaza either, that was occupied by Egypt between 1948 and 1967. No. When was the Palestinian national identity created?
1964.
1964. Who created the Palestinian national identity? The KGB and the Soviet Union. All right, and this isn't Avi Abelo talking, and this isn't, forgive me, I forgot your name talking. Mark talking. Anyone can say, simply Google, I forgot what his name is, a Romanian KGB defector who said straight out the creation of the Palestinian identity was a Soviet plot to weaken America by supporting terror to destroy Israel using a fake invented people, because America was getting too strong in the Middle East via Israel, and the Soviet Union wanted to stop the growing American influence in the Middle East. It's an invented identity based on Jew hatred that the Soviet Union created in 1964. That is the basis of the growing Jew hatred today. Now tell me this. How many organizations raising millions and hundreds of millions of dollars from good Jews in America is providing that basic factual information to the Jewish community, and especially to our college students, in order to be better prepared and armed to deal with the growing anti-Semitism they're dealing with today? How many?
One.
Okay? So if anyone thinks that all that money is being used and it's going to help, down the toilet. Because if you do not, again, like a doctor, you can give an analysis, you can give a diagnosis and a medication to a patient. But if the diagnosis is wrong, is the medication going to work? Same thing here. So long as the Jewish organizational world, except the ZOA, continues to ignore and educate the Jewish community, forget about the non-Jews, the Jews, our own communities, our own organizations. And it's not just the organizations. How many rabbis are saying this in order to empower their communities to know what's really going on? Right? So no matter how much money is being thrown into fighting anti-Semitism or educating about Holocaust, it's going to do nothing. Nothing in terms of helping provide more safety to Jews in America or anywhere, because it is based on a misdiagnosis and ignoring the true diagnosis. That the kernel, that the power, that the machine behind the growing Jew hatred today in every facet of America and the West is based on a fake, invented identity called Palestinians. Hence, the support for a two-state solution is in and of itself anti-Semitic. because it is based on a fake anti-Semitic claim that such a people exist to replace the Jews. And then you have Jews supporting basically our own self-destruction, unwittingly, because no one's telling them that it's all a lie created to defeat us and destroy us. Now I'm going to put together the first 2 points I mentioned before. Because on the spiritual battle, there is still so much to do. Because I don't just want Jewish college students, or any Jew of any age, to be able to not be impacted or affected by the constant lies thrown at them. Anti-Semitic, anti-Israel lies. Because we're losing so many Jews, so many Jewish kids today. And it's not just, college is too late. We have to be starting in high school educating them with this truth. Elementary school. And it's not just non-religious schools. The problem is in the religious schools too. They're not educating properly and giving the truth. Because everything's about political correctness. So what Jewish school, if they have parents and donors who they'd go crazy if all of a sudden the teachers and the administration start teaching the truth that the Palestinian national identity was created by the KGB to destroy Israel. All of a sudden parents can go up in arms. So no school can educate the truth. So our kids are left alone without the weapons and the shield necessary to go into the world, especially college, but not just, to defend themselves. And it's not just about defending themselves. I'll give you this. Whenever I talk to college students, at the end they always go, okay, Avi, or in seminaries or yeshivas in Israel, unbelievable, thank you so much. What can I do to help Israel on my college campus? And my answer is, I don't want to disappoint you, but nothing you do on your college campus is going to help Israel. But I'll tell you what, if you arm yourself with the knowledge of Jewish history, biblical history, modern Israel history, and truly understand what's going on today, and you follow the truth and not the propaganda, what you can do on your college students, on your college campus, is to save your own Jewish identity and save the Jewish identity of your fellow Jewish students on campus. Because at least they'll be able to see someone standing up proudly on the offense with the truth. And all you have to do is be able to show how stupid and idiotic and crazy the anti-Israel activists are and the lies they're spewing, so that anyone passing by, and especially the Jewish students walking by, all they have to do is see that you know your stuff and the other person doesn't, and you're already helping their Jewish identity. And this is and that's the spiritual war. By getting the truth out to as many Jews of all ages, and especially the youth, as possible, in order to save their Jewish souls. And yes, the third Jewish commonwealth of the modern state of Israel today, not only is it not the problem, it's the solution to helping save our kids and their Jewish identity by a true connection to Israel and to their Jewish identity, regardless of religious level. But just that connection and curiosity to learn more, that could save so many Jews, and obviously getting across the truth. So the only way the Jewish community is going to be able to fight this anti-Semitism is by finally standing up for the truth. And guess what? Like I said before, major organizations aren't going to do it. Not going to do it. All that wasted millions of money, not going to do it, down the drain. And then it's up to as many Jews as possible to give as much of their money as possible to organizations like the ZOA and to organizations like mine that are doing this. Because we have so many Jews to save. And it's so easy because the truth is on our side. God is on our side. The Bible is on our side. History is on our side. And not enough of our communities and organizations and schools are giving the proper information, educating the proper information in order to help save our youth today. Now I want to touch upon a different aspect of how we're winning this war. All right, and this has to do with miracles. I told you I gave a whole miracle talk on Shabbat connected to Purim, so I'm going to give you the highlights without the whole talk. Who would have imagined on October 7th or 8th Well, asked differently. What was the mind state of almost every single Jew on October 7th and 8th? The mind. Where were our minds? We were depressed. We were depressed. We were worried. Is Israel going to survive? Is there going to be in Israel to go visit? Right? To that level. I mean, and again, I'll just give you a little tidbit. I was Simchat Torah morning in Israel. I live with my family in Efrat. I'm blessed to daven in the synagogue of Rabbi Shlomo Katz. Unbelievable synagogue, unbelievable singing, dancing, ruach, spirituality. The best of the best, the sweetest of the sweet. Wake up in the morning, looking forward to going to shul and singing and dancing with the Torah. And actually didn't wake up, it was my wife. She wakes me up. She goes, Avi, did you hear that? I'm like, what? Hear what? She goes, Avi, listen. And then I heard it. I heard there was a siren. But it wasn't over our area of Efrat and Gush Etzion, the Judean hills. It was far off. It was probably over the Beit Shemesh area. So I'm like, okay, this is not good. Something's going on. So I get dressed quickly, take my talit, go downstairs, walk out of my building, and it's like a 5-minute walk to shul. And I see a friend of mine on his phone. And again, it's a religious community. We don't go on our phones. I'm like, what's going on? Why are you on your phone? And he tells me straight out. And this is 8 o'clock in the morning. 8:30 in the morning, Israel time, right? It's 1 a.m. here. You guys are asleep. We're at war. Rockets are being shot all over the country. We've been invaded by terrorists. People are being massacred. That's how we woke up in the morning on Simchat Torah. And again, not everyone in Israel knew, but definitely communities that are security-minded and have many people in the security forces knew. And we're very security-minded where we live in the Judean hills. And we got a phone call from our son who's in the army in his active service. Immediately, he wasn't home. He was somewhere else for the holiday. And he said that I've been called up. I'm going down to Gaza because we're at war. So all of a sudden, there's not only are we under attack, but our own son's going down to Gaza. Immediately, I'm on my phone. This is already 8:30 in the morning. I'm on my phone because I'm waiting to be called up for reserve duty. My other son is also waiting to be called up for reserve duty. He's in reserves as well. That's how our morning began. I ran down to my parents. They live 5 minutes away down the hill to check in on them. They're in their safe room. The first rocket attack come over Efrat. I'm in the safe room with my parents. I see they're okay. I run back home. I then decide to go to the synagogue right next door because we have to be near a safe room. The Rabbi Katz's shul is like a 5-minute walk, so it's a little too far if rockets are coming out of the sky. That was our reality on October 7th. And the biggest question in synagogue, and this is Simchat Torah, the happiest day, one of the happiest days of the Jewish calendar, right? We're supposed to be singing and dancing and celebrating, being thankful to God and for the Torah and our Jewish lifestyle. There are only like 30, 40 people left in synagogue because everyone else ran home. And then the decision was made. Should we sing and dance? It's the holiday of Simchat Torah. We're supposed to be singing and dancing. So we made the decision in shul that we're going to have one round of singing and dancing with the Torah scrolls. And it was me and 3 of my sons in synagogue. And we're always a pretty powerful bunch when it comes to singing and dancing in our communities and organizations. And we led this most spiritual, powerful hakafa of Simchat Torah ever in my life. Because we weren't singing and dancing out of happiness. We were singing and dancing out of a deep, deep spiritual connection to God, praying to Him, being thankful to Him, and to please save us on a spiritual level, but while also being thankful, because we have so much. And you can never forget being thankful. And some people came up to us afterwards and they said, well, when you first decided to have one round of dancing, we thought it was wrong, it's not appropriate. But after we experienced that round of dancing, we know you made the right decision. Okay? So the mindset of the Jewish people, and here we were in Israel under attack and not knowing what's going on. Our son's going into battle, and I was called up later in the day at Mincha time. I got the shul for Mincha. Boom, I got the message, I'm being called up. I'm out of here. So now my wife has one on the Gaza border and one in the Judean hills on the patrol. The mindset was catastrophe. Who could have imagined that 16 months later, the Jewish state of Israel would be in the most powerful, strongest geopolitical situation since biblical times as a people, with the third Jewish commonwealth, the modern state of Israel, being the representative of the Jewish people. Who could have imagined? Nobody could have imagined. Right? And we're only here because of the countless of miracles that have taken place in this world on October 7th and throughout till this day and continuing. Countless of miracles. So, I laugh when I read the news, and even when news is reported upon by Jewish media, because they are so off. They are so off. There are very, very few news sources to trust in terms of actually giving an analysis of what's going on today and not narrative-driven. I'd go to jns.org, go to israelnationalnews.com, my own website, israelanwired.com. There are a few, but we're not the big ones. The big ones is Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, and all the rest, all right? What's the major analysis coming out of all of the pundits after the United Nations vote last week, where America voted with Russia and Israel joined in that vote? What's the narrative coming out of most of the Jewish pundits? Anybody? How horrible is it? Two points. One, how horrible it is that Israel voted with Russia? We voted against Ukraine? How can this be? And point number two, well, we just saw how Trump dumped Ukraine. Trump's going to dump Israel the same way. Those are the two talking points. Those are the true talking points across media, Jewish media today. And challenge me on this. You find an article in any of these places that says otherwise, send it to me. 99% of all the articles, all the opinion pieces being written right now in the Jewish world, out of Israel, out of America, are all those two talking points. They are so wrong. Okay? Let me just tell you how unbelievable that vote represents what's the true state of the Jewish people in Israel today. Again, whether you like Trump, you don't love Trump, you love Trump, whatever. Trump has just changed the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy, and Israel, we are on the winning side. A key point in that whole strategy. Trump's not dumping Israel. Trump needs Israel for American foreign policy, not for Israel. Okay? And that's important to understand. I'm a big believer. Trump's not the Mashiach. Netanyahu's not the Mashiach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one running the show, and everyone is just a messenger. Trump's a messenger. Netanyahu's a messenger. Biden was a messenger. Sometimes these messengers do things we like. Sometimes they do things we don't like. But never forget, God's running the show. What's really going on right now? Who is the enemy of the United States of America right now, according to the Trump doctrine? Biggest enemy? China. Okay? Now, how is China impacting and endangering America in the biggest way? Before the alliance, it's a commerce war, right? It's a commerce war. It's an economic war. Everything else is an addition. It's built upon the economic war. Okay? Now listen to this brilliance. Without getting into the details of the Ukraine-Russia issue, because that's not for this talk, that's something else entirely, I'm not going there. Ukraine is a big problem for America in many ways. Trump is trying to weaken China by pulling Russia out of the axis of evil. That's what it's about. Whether he's selling out Ukraine, not selling out Ukraine, because again, it was a pretty good deal he was giving Ukraine, even though the Ukrainian leader ran away out of the White House. But it's not about Ukraine-Russia war. It's about the bigger war that the Trump doctrine is trying to help America. It's the commerce war against China. And he's trying to weaken the Chinese axis of evil, China, Russia, Iran, by pulling Russia out of it. Now, who else is the big winner by pulling Russia out of the axis of evil? Israel. Who was the superpower that the Arab Muslim world always used in order to counter the American alliance with Israel? Russia. By America pulling Russia out of the Chinese orbit. He's also pulling Russia away from being the patron for the Arab Muslim world. And now the next step of how Israel is the biggest winner out of all this on a geopolitical scale. Jews have to stop being embarrassed about being Jews. We have to stop being embarrassed about what we're doing. Oh, we have to get out of Gaza. Oh, we have to get out of Lebanon. Oh, we have to get out of Syria. No, it's time for a Jew to stand up and be proud in being a Jew, being the best Jew we can be. And yes, standing up and fighting and defending the Jewish people in Israel, and not only defending the Jewish people, defending the minorities whose lives are endangered. We have to be proud of doing that. What's the second part of Trump's plan? And this hasn't discussed yet, but it's all part of it. When Trump mentioned America taking control of Gaza, he's looking at Gaza being the land point, and most probably a port being built there that will connect U.S. trade to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, to India, to counter China and weaken the Chinese-Iranian axis. And he's only able to succeed in this commerce war against China if there's no terror or violence in the ancestral Jewish homeland. So, yes, he's standing up on the side of good against evil, but understand, it is so much deeper than that on a geopolitical, economic level to benefit America and defeat the axis of evil in every way, including the commerce war. How many Jewish pundits are writing about this right now in the Jewish papers and the Israeli papers? We are living through historic, redemptive times. And what I expect from my rabbis today is for them to say as follows. Recent news, just today I posted, the Israeli flag was hoisted up by Syrian Druze in Syria. Why? Okay? Why? Because they know the only power, the only nation, the only country that would protect them from both the Turkish, Syrian, Sunni jihadi terrorists and the Shia, Hezbollah, Iranian terrorists, only one country will protect their lives: the Jewish state of Israel. And they are glad and proud, and they officially called for the Jewish state of Israel to protect them. Right now, officially, the Jewish state of Israel is the protectorate of southern Syria all the way up to Damascus. Okay? Now, let me tell you this. We're just talking geopolitics. Guess what? Anyone who studies the Bible knows that Syria is biblical Israel. So I would expect from my rabbis today, every single one of them, to be educating the Jews in their communities. These are the biblical borders of Israel. I don't know when it's going to happen, but God said it's supposed to happen. So if we know that God knows everything, He knows what's right, and He said these are the biblical borders, then obviously it's for the benefit of the world that the Jews are in all the biblical borders. I don't want a Jewish college student arguing about Israel, why Israel's doing a genocide. I want him standing there saying, you know nothing. We're in Syria because the Jews want us to be in Syria, and that's the biblical homeland of the Jewish people. And that's what we should be educating, to be on the offense. And it's not just the biblical borders in Syria, it's the biblical borders in Lebanon. Asher and Naphtali, southern Lebanon is Asher and Naphtali. Total victory is yes. I'm a big believer. God is running things, and all you have to do is use common sense and analyze reality. Reality is that the Jews in Israel are not safe until we remain in southern Lebanon. And guess who else is also not safe unless we remain in southern Lebanon? The minorities who live in southern Lebanon, whose lives are in danger, again, by the Turkish, Syrian Sunnis and by the Iranian Shia terrorists. So we are a blessing to humanity. Israel's not the problem why there is no peace in the Middle East. Israel is the solution for peace in the Middle East. And the way we defeat the ideology is by, yes, Israel becoming bigger again. Because that's when our enemies understand they're losing. And I wish our Jewish organizations and rabbis and educators would start educating with these truths to empower and instill pride in as many of our Jewish adults, collegiates, youth as possible to be proud Jews correctly understanding analysis. And again, I'm not God, and I have no clue when all this is going to happen. And I'm not telling anyone to teach this is going to happen today or tomorrow. No. But we could start talking, and I'll even go even further. Anyone who studies the Bible knows that in different places there are different biblical borders. I want to start seeing classes everywhere. Let's start talking about what the different biblical borders are of Israel. In this book it says these are the biblical borders. In this book these are the biblical borders. Which one it's going to be? I don't know. When it's going to happen? I don't know. But at least start understanding the biblical borders. Why are we arguing over whether we should apply sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and Gaza? We should be talking and teaching everyone about the biblical borders. That one day is going to be the Jewish state of Israel.
Make Israel great again.
Make Israel great again. Make Israel bigger again. Right? And that's the true victory. That is the true victory over an ideology that at its core is anti-God. And it's the Jewish people, by standing up for what God teaches us and tells us and outlines for us in the Torah and the Bible, that we're able to provide the true victory. And who's on the front line ensuring that we're going to achieve this victory? It's those of us in Israel today. It's my son who's getting married in a month and he has 1 year left in army service. It's my other son who's already been called up for his 4th stint of reserve duty. It's me being called up for my 4th stint of reserve duty. It's the Jewish people in Israel today that are literally on the front line with our bodies, with our rifles, and with our spirit. Because again, it's a spiritual war. It's not about the guns. And I'm sure you've heard many of the stories from soldiers, from hostages, from hostage families, how what keeps them going or kept them going was the lighting of candles, was the prayers, it was the deepening of their Jewish identity with our thousands of years ancestral traditions. That is the true battle. And I will end by showing you, this is my uniform that I'll be putting on again in July, and that thousands of Israeli soldiers are wearing these patches on their uniforms, and everyone can see. This is a patch of the temple. This is a patch of Mashiach. Okay? That is the spirit of the Jewish people in Israel today, that unfortunately 99.9% of our media and leaders, definitely in America, are not giving across to our fellow Jews here. And it's important to understand why there are secular Jews in Israel, or not as religious Jews, wearing these patches in Israel today. Do you know why? Well, I'll tell you the story of one soldier. He comes home after his service, and the first thing he does is put a picture up of the temple on his bedroom wall. And his mother comes into him. He goes, well, we're not religious Jews. We've never talked about the temple. We don't even do anything religious. Why are you putting up a picture of the temple on your wall? He goes, Mom, you don't understand. In Gaza, every single home had a picture of the Dome of the Rock. That's what they're fighting for. They didn't just call the name of the official name of the war, what? The Al-Aqsa flood. Al-Aqsa, that's the name for the Temple Mount. That's the official name of the war. They know what they're fighting over. They're fighting over taking over our Temple Mount, taking over Jerusalem, getting rid of us, taking over our country. That's what they're fighting over. Guess who does not know what this war is about? Too many Jews. Oh, if only we get out of Judea and Samaria. Oh, let's not kill them. Oh, get out of Lebanon. Oh, make a peace process. Oh, get all the hostages out right now and surrender. All right, those are still voices today that we hear that show that too many of our own, and even our leaders, do not understand what this war really is about. But many Jews in Israel, and especially many of our fighters, we know. We know. And I want to end with this last point, and then open up to questions, however time there is for questions. Anyone here who is a grandparent? Anyone here who is a parent? Anyone here who looks to be a parent? Please God. There's one place where you can send your children for college, where you don't have to worry as much about intermarriage. You don't have to worry about antisemitism. Where? And it's much cheaper. And with your savings, I'm being serious, put a down payment on a piece of property in Israel, because real estate only goes up in the Holy Land of Israel. Even if it means you can only buy a one-bedroom apartment or a studio, don't worry. You could rent it and use it as rental income, and it'll be there for you then to sell and get something bigger when you want to come. All right? Come home. Start thinking about coming home. The future of the Jewish people is home, and the Jewish people have never been stronger. And if you take anything out of this talk, is do not be depressed by the daily headlines. Look beyond the headlines, and if you're not yet a subscriber, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe, where you get a daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect understanding of what's going on with Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world. Thank you. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with questions. Yeah. Okay. Well, start with Madeline, who was.
You said this is about ideology, and we have to defeat the ideology. This is in their Quran. Kill all the Jews. It's in their literature. How can you defeat that?
Okay, so defeating the ideology means understanding it's never going to go away, but making them so afraid to act upon that ideology. Okay? And I'll give you an example of what's working today. The Abraham Accords. Fabulous. All right? Now, some people think, oh, it totally changed the world. We're now at peace with the Arab Muslim countries. I'm a big fan and student of Dr. Mordechai Kedar. I don't know anyone here who knows him. Okay? Expert on Islam in the Middle East. And after the Abraham Accords were signed, I interviewed him and I said, what do you think about the Abraham Accords? And he said, listen, any agreement signed with the Arab Muslim Middle East is like the sand in the wind of a desert. Okay? Meaning you can never trust it. Even if leader X really wants peace, you have no clue if he's not going to be toppled tomorrow, or in 2 years, or in 5 years. I'll just give Syria as an example. For decades, Israel was being pressured to give the Golan Heights to Syria. Can you imagine what our situation would be today if an Israeli government had agreed to give the Golan Heights to Syria? The Assad regime, even though they were butchers and they were horrible, yes, they were a reliable enemy. There was a safe, secure border with Syria. But now it's ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the Taliban have taken over Syria. You can never trust long-term any agreement in the Arab Muslim Middle East. You can't. You do your best to make deals, but we Jews have a chip in our DNA. We hope. We hope for good. Hope's not a strategy, and definitely not in a world where evil exists. The true Jewish DNA chip, the chip should be one of pride, of doing everything necessary to protect ourselves, knowing that protecting ourselves, we're helping the world. Not feeling embarrassed about how to protect ourselves. So the way forward with the Arab Muslim Middle East is, yes, to make as many Abraham Accords with as many of these countries as possible, because so long as they know we're a power to be reckoned with, that it's not in their interest to raise a pinky against us, and also obviously when we help them economically, and here anyone involved in lobbying Washington and American politicians, there's still a very big problem in helping American politicians understand this. Because I was sitting in meetings again with congressmen and think tanks, and they said, "Oh, we're going to take care of the economy in the Middle East, and then it'll be taken care of." We're like, "What are you, nuts?" Like, you can't. I didn't say that out loud, but like, no, they still can't get it. Like America with freedom, with the separation of church and state, they don't understand religious ideology. That's a culture. They separate policy from religion. No, Islam is a political culture. It's not a religion like we think it is. So they don't have that understanding, and their focus is still help the economy, help the economy. So we Jews have to be smarter than that. We can't let ourselves delude ourselves into thinking just because we have an agreement with an Arab Muslim country that all of a sudden we have peace with them. No, we have to we'll make that agreement with them, but not delude ourselves into thinking something can change today that will turn them against us. All right? So again, specifically to answer your question, just to repeat, we'll never get rid of that ideology, but we will be able to make ourselves as strong as possible to scare them from acting upon that ideology. Okay? Yes?
So I have a two-part question. When you mention the importance of Israel's sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu could lead the country in that direction, number one? And number two, when you mention that in D.C. to the politicians, how do they react?
Okay, so number one, I do think we're going to be in the direction of going there, of Netanyahu applying sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Don't know when. Obviously, a lot has to come with pressure from here, so I'm throwing this out to the ZOA and to all of you. Work on pushing these messages out here to your circles. Whether you want me to come out and continue talking or use other speakers, get the message out there. Get our fellow Jews empowered to be vocal that the way to help save America, and not just to save Israel, is by Israel applying sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. And a message I always tell people is we have to understand, our political leaders are not leaders. They're elected officials. And we all know the electoral process, the democratic electoral process, they are, by definition, followers. They go according to what their voters tell them to do. They are not leaders. So if we want our American leaders to act, future congressman, please God, and if we want Netanyahu, right? And if we want, right? And we want Netanyahu to act, he has to hear from the street that the public want it. And the more louder he hears it from the street, from the public, then the easier it will be for him to actually do it. And that's why actually last month, right before the Trump-Netanyahu meeting in the White House, Pulse of Israel, we commissioned a poll together with the sovereignty movement. I don't know if you're familiar with Nadia Matar and Yehudit Katzover in Israel, but they've been spearheading the sovereignty movement for years. And we did a poll in Israeli society to find out how much of Israeli society supports the application of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And we found out in our poll that 68% of the Israeli population support one form of sovereignty or another. And that we made sure that both Netanyahu and Trump and the people around them had that polling data before they sat down to meet, to understand that yes, the Israeli people, and the polling data, and I can send it to you, like the polling data so you could see, and the breakdown of right, left, religious, secular, majority across the population. Secular, left, obviously religious, right, 68% of the population support, because unfortunately, Israeli society today understand that that's what's necessary on a security level. Forget about fighting ideology, forget about religion and the Bible. On a security level, that's the only way they could be safe. And I'll just tie this into a latest news. As I was flying to America last Thursday, was the news report about the 5 bus bombs that went off prematurely. That miraculously, another miracle or many miracles, no one was hurt or injured. They went off at 9 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. Right? And there were supposed to be another 10 bus bombings that they were all supposed to go off together, a total of 15. And the intelligence reports came out saying that it actually was supposed to be a diversion. Just like October 7th, they had the massive rocket attack, that it was a diversion to cover for the land invasion. So the bus bombings were supposed to be a diversion, that all the forces go take care of the wounded and the killed or whatever, and then there was supposed to be a land invasion from Judea and Samaria of Hamas and Palestinian Authority. So Israelis understand that the only way we have security in Judea and Samaria is whatever solution we are in the process, we didn't finish yet, that we are in the process of implementing in Gaza, we also implement in Judea and Samaria. So I do believe it's a question of when, not if. In terms of the second question, what was the response from congressmen and senators in Washington when we were sitting with them last week? Again, we were sitting with those who we already knew were supportive, or the ones who, majority of them. I have 3 videos of 3 congressmen all saying they support sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. A fourth is in the middle of making a video, and he has to be provided with the exact talking points so he can do it properly. He said, no, I'm not doing a video with you right now. I want to do it properly. Send me the bullet points that you just discussed, and then I'll do it in a studio properly. And many of them understood. They understood us telling them that it's the ideology. Whether they have the power to make a difference in terms of policy in America, that's a much harder question to answer. But there was an understanding and definitely willing to listen, and some outright agreeing with us. So there's what to talk about. Wait, 1 second, I'll get you. Someone here? Yes.
I think this will be the last one.
Oh, 2 more? Really brief. Really brief.
Did you say that Jews in America are safe?
Well, the short answer long term is no. Long term, I think we are experiencing the frog in the boiling pot sensation. Where again, I grew up 70s, 80s, 90s. We'd look at Europe and say, "Oh my God, you can't go to synagogue without a police officer, without security," and all of a sudden we have it in America. You can't have an event without security. I remember never having to have security at events here in America anywhere. And so I think when we're just getting used to it, and more security, and more federal funding for security, and for our schools and our organizations and JCCs, I don't see it getting better. I only see it getting worse. I hope I'm wrong. But that's also my encouragement for, and again, I'm a realist. Not every Jew is going to come home to Israel. But those who have the wherewithal and the understanding of what's really transpiring, and an understanding of history and an understanding of the future of the Jewish people, I encourage everyone to open up your file at Nefesh B'Nefesh and start the process, and start talking to your children and grandchildren, because the future is bright for us. Yes?
Regarding the campuses,
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on using the Patriot Act and RICO laws to seize college endowments, deport professors, and if necessary, even shut down campuses? Because if you have ties to terrorism, what are your thoughts on using lawfare to bring the campuses to their knees?
100%. 100%. Every single, whether it's defunding or holding on to their grants or whatever, billions of dollars in the bank accounts from anything. They're going anything legal to stop. I mean, it's a stain on American higher education, that it's not just the professors and the tenured professors, but it's the administrations that are blatantly outright Jew haters. And I'll just and I'll end with this point. But again, we have to understand, this didn't happen today. This didn't happen over 10 years. This didn't happen over 20 years. I can send anyone the video of an interview of another KGB defector, Igor Bramanov, I think his name is. In the 1980s, he was interviewed on one of the top nightly news programs, back then when I was growing up, it was either CBS, NBC, or ABC. That was it. No cable news, nothing, right? So a third of America was watching this show where he was being interviewed, and this is the 1980s. Okay, 1980s. He said, Americans don't know. The Soviet Union has been working to destroy America via cultural, via communist values, and against American values since the 1960s. He said this in the 1980s. And he said the second, and again, I can send you the video and you hear him directly. The second the Soviet Union succeeds in capturing 3 generations of university professors in America, and he said this in 1980, he said America is done. There's no reversal of the process. And what do you see today? Whole university system captured by a Soviet plan from the 1960s. So you think America's going to solve it just by lawfare against that? I wish. It should be done. Anyway, everything should be done. But you're dealing with a red-green alliance that's been working to destroy America since the 1960s. That doesn't get fixed with a Band-Aid. It doesn't get fixed overnight. And it is very hard for a democracy to overcome the shackles of democracy which are to protect individual liberties, to defeat an ideology that means taking away individual liberties. So it's almost an impossible situation based on... So I'm optimistic about the future of humanity, about the future of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. not as optimistic about the future of the Jewish people in the Western countries, based on the trajectory. But the optimism is, Am Yisrael Chai. We're living in historic times. Come home to Israel.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.